And yeah, if you can go ahead and keep introducing yourselves in the chat, it's lovely to see many people I know and people that I don't know. And so that's always a really nice feature. While we don't have time to go all the way around and get to know one another, it's always nice to see each other in the chat. I'm sure you'll see other friendly faces that you know. Go ahead to the next slide, Helen. So we'll start with some general overview. This is what we'll cover today. Mostly we're going to be talking about the new grant opportunity that's available through the Tending the Future Fund, our child care program. This grant is a one-time grant opportunity, so we'll talk a little bit more about what it looks like, but we'll cover that. We're going to talk about what the eligibility is. I'm going to go in depth into the application and really what we're looking for to support people as they fill it out. We'll talk about the timing and decision cycles, how you can connect with me as this is available, and any questions you might have. I welcome you to ask questions as we go, so feel free to drop those right in the chat. We'll leave plenty of time at the end for you to ask any questions you might have for me. But also, I think sometimes it's easier to just address things as we're on that page. So go ahead and feel free to drop something in the chat, or be really bold and raise your hand. I would love for you to talk directly to me versus me only talk at you for the next 30 minutes or an hour here. So feel free to be bold and unmute yourself, raise your hand, and I'd be happy to answer those questions as we go. Next slide. This is the mission and the value of the foundation. These are really important. This is what guides us, so we always want to show them. Of course, our vision is in Alaska where people, cultures, and communities are thriving. And we do that by investing, connecting, and convening. We empower Alaskans to help each other. And you're going to see that word convene multiple places. And when we get to what this grant opportunity is, you really see that it's a reflection of the foundation living out that mission. Next slide. Here are our values. Again, these are what guide us. Collaboration. We believe in Alaskans, listen and learning from their ideas. I like to call that out because I think you're going to see in this grant opportunity, this award opportunity, that's really the center focus of what we're trying to do here. Go ahead, next slide. This is our history. If you aren't aware of the foundation, these are our three founders that are here. The foundation's been doing work here in Alaska for many, many, many years. And in 2023, we surpassed awarding over $500 million here in the state of Alaska. That's something we're really proud of. Next slide. And here's our board. Our board consists of half family members and half community members. And so really a diverse range of voices there. And on the next slide here, you can see where everyone's from. So I hope your community is represented. The board really hopefully represents many voices from across Alaska. Hopefully your community is represented there. Here it is, our core grant making. So I always want to highlight core grant making. This is what we're really known for. Many of you are probably familiar with these programs. Hopefully many of you have received awards from these programs. We're not going to talk about core grant making today, but we always want to highlight it. You can always learn a lot about our core grant making on our website or book time with a program officer. So we're going to talk today instead about the other side of grant making we do, which is strategic grant making. So strategic grant making is long-term investments that create systems level change or meet the moment through partnership and collaboration with communities. Many people are aware of one of our strategic grant making programs that have been in existence for a long time around housing and homelessness, but we have a number of other strategic grant making programs, and I'm going to talk specifically about one that was recently passed by our board. It's called the Tending the Future Fund, and it specifically looks at childcare and really looking at the systems level change that needs to happen in childcare. So the Tending the Future Fund passed. It was board approved in June of 2025, so it's relatively new still. But so far, we've already invested $570,000 in this fund. Here's one example of an award we gave. We gave $100,000 to the YMCA of Alaska at the start of this school year to open 3 after-school programs on the island. And so now the 3 elementary schools on the island all have an after-school program in them, which will allow for up to 150 youth to receive after-school care now and full summer programming. And so that's an example of some of the things we've been able to do. We're really excited about what we've been able to do. And we have $1.43 million remaining through June of 2027. So what are we looking for? This is what everybody wants to know. I came from a nonprofit. I wrote plenty of grants in my lifetime, so I understand this question. This is really for all of our grant making. In all of our grant making, these are the general things we're sort of looking for, right? What is your community impact, your organizational capacity, your financial plans, project feasibility, funding stacks, sustainability, community partnership. These are sort of the general overarching things we're looking at all the time. I'm going to go into very specific detail about this application, but you'll see that these themes will carry over into the application you'll be completing. So I'll talk some like specifics about the application, but in general, these are the things we're sort of always looking for when we're reviewing your grants requests. So what does it mean for childcare? You know, as part of this initiative, one of the questions about making systems level change is an understanding that the foundation and others have, if you're familiar with the world of childcare, probably reached, which is that it's not sustainable on its own. It's not sustainable just by parents paying. It's not sustainable just without other involvement across all the different spheres of influence. And so for these awards, we're really looking at how communities can identify sustainable long-term revenue opportunities for childcare. Specifically in this context, we're talking about the local context. So we'll talk more about that as you sort of see what these awards are, but really specifically around the local context. How is your community engaged in finding solutions, and how do we collaborate across sectors to get that done? I mean, no one knows their community better than you. So the community you're sitting in right now, you are actually the expert of that community. And so this is one way for us to really allow local communities to sort of have those conversations and bring forward ideas to help deal with the long-term revenue challenges that sit in childcare sustainability. And so there's two levels of awards that are available, and I'm going to go through both of them here, and then you'll see the application next and what that's going to look like. The first award is what we're calling the Convening Grant. The Convening Grant is up to $7,000, and this grant is really available for first-time or early-stage convenings. And so these are local or regional convenings. And this would be appropriate for a community that really hasn't been meeting and discussing the cost of childcare. They haven't been looking at local revenue sources. They haven't discussed maybe a tax or a business incentive or other things that could be local solutions in your community. This is we know we have to do something. We'd like to get in the room, but we haven't been able to. The Convening Grant is perfect for you. It's about bringing together diverse stakeholders to assess community needs. So really look across your community and say, where are our bigger gaps? Where are the opportunities for funding? Where are the creative ideas we could be bringing forward? As a group, create sort of a shared vision, set some priorities, explore the multiple revenue options that may be available in your community, and produce a clear, accessible plan that prioritizes revenues passed that can then go out and be shared. Because what we understand is that people need time to come together, to discuss, to meet, to think about those. And then after that happens, there's this whole other part of the work that is then to share that information out to people who maybe weren't able to be in the room, or to policymakers, or to others who would have to be part of that final solution. And so for your Convening Grant, we're really looking for people on the front end of that, where communities really haven't started the conversation. The Designing Grant is for up to $15,000. And this is available for communities that are in that further along in that conversation. So they have advanced convenings that can result in actionable plans. So maybe your community has been talking about the cost of childcare. Maybe you have been having weekly or monthly lunch get-togethers. You've sort of gathered in rooms and had this discussion, and you identified a couple options, and we really need to get together now and go into those options and really dig into those options and address the readiness of those options, build out implementation priorities. And so if we want to pursue a change in the local tax or at the borough level, what would that look like? What are the concrete steps that would need to be done? Are there governance structures and timelines that would need to be implemented? What would that roadmap sort of look like? And it would really guide decision-making and a launch to a tangible outcome. And so communities in the Designing Grant stage may have identified 2 or 3 possible revenue options, and really want to use the Designing Grant to narrow it down to one, and then really create out the implementation strategy of how it would actually be able to happen. And that would be making sure getting people in the room and who are those voices and who would carry it forward and all those other sorts of things. I want to make it really clear that neither the convening or designing grant is about coming together to talk about childcare and the lack of childcare. This is really about revenue, and it's really about identifying local revenue options, and it can be creative revenue. It doesn't have to be a tax. We've seen some examples of taxes that have been successful on the local level, but it could be a creative revenue outcome from business models. It could be from tribal investments in different ways. And so I don't want people to get stuck that it has to be a tax, but it does have to be revenue related. So when you fill out your applications, if you do choose to pursue this, know that that's sort of what these grants are really intended to be focused on. Who's eligible? Alaska nonprofits are eligible, tribes and other governmental organizations like local governments. We really want to point out that if you have another open grant right now with the foundation, that is not a problem, that is not a challenge. You are eligible to apply. So if you have a tier 1 open with us or a legacy grant or something else, you're eligible for this award. And so you can have other grants open with us and it wouldn't make you ineligible for this. So what's the timing and decision cycles? Grants are open now. The application was posted and opened on the 23rd. So on Monday this week, you can find it. I'm going to talk about where you can find it on our website. It's available until March 27th. People need to apply by midnight. Well, 11:59. So don't apply at midnight. 11:59 on March 27th. Our intent is to announce the awards on April 24th. We hope, so the project window is sort of narrow. I'll call that out and I'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about the application, but projects can begin May 1st and they must be completed by November 30th. So where to start? If you haven't yet, our website's the best place to start. If you go to rasmussen.org for our general website, at the top, you'll find a little circle there. You can see it in red that says find funding. When that's clicked on, it'll take you right down to strategic grant making. Once you're on strategic grant making, it's going to bring you to this primary page that's really all about this child care opportunity. It's going to have the overview, the application, a place for you to book time with a program officer if you need it, the application. This webinar will be stored there. So if you need to refer back to it, you could find it there. So all the grant resources you need to be successful. Provide all the emails and context information. So when your project is ready to submit, your application will actually get submitted there to the grants email, and that can all be found on our website. And so it will be an email submission. So before I dig into the application, I'll take a brief pause so people can think. And if there's any questions at this stage, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we'll go really into the application details. This is a great time if you want to, on your computer, go and download the application. If you haven't, you can find it on our website. And Gary also linked it right there in the chat where you can find it. Go ahead, Jesse. Yeah, please.
I'm real new to my role, and I thought I'd just go ahead and ask how Rasmuson Foundation defines childcare. I've got a 2-year-old, a 6-year-old, but I've also got nephews that are in high school. I know with the Boys and Girls Club closure in Anchorage, that's a big need in Anchorage and throughout the state. So again, really, we have a wide variety of needs in the capital village here of Juneau, but it varies depending on the community southeast. So
yeah,
good intro question.
No, that's an excellent question because childcare is very broad, right? And you can see we funded an after-school program. To us, childcare is really the lifespan of children needing care. That could be before school, after school, summer care. Part of this initiative is to fund summer camps and summer programming because, of course, that's essential. Care for children in any context. So that allows their parents to go to work or pursue other things that they would like to be doing outside the home. And so, yeah, really, when we're using the term childcare, we're not specifically only talking about a very specific age range of early childcare. We're really talking about the breadth of childcare across all ages, including summer, after school, et cetera. That's a great question. And your community may look at, you know, your community best, and you may say our real big need is actually in the summer section. And so we want to pursue local funding that supports summer childcare, right? that would be totally appropriate for this. You know your community best if that's sort of where the biggest need arises. Other communities might identify young ages as the primary challenge, or you may just want to look at revenue for the breadth of childcare. Really, that would be up to your community, and we would encourage you in the application to be really clear about what you're hoping to target. But that's a great question, Jesse.
Issa, I have a question. So I'm Lauren with the Homer Foundation, and so we have some major things happening down in Homer for childcare. And I'm looking at the Tending the Future Fund website, and it says that funds like the Kodiak grant are by application or by invitation only. So if we have recommendations for the Rasmussen grant of things that are happening in our community, how do we talk to a program officer, send those programs to that program officer?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know you have a lot going down in Homer, and I've talked to many entities in Homer about the really
Great.
exciting things happening in Homer. It's great to see local philanthropy making a big difference in your community. You can always, I'll put my email in the chat, or maybe I can ask Gary to put my email in the chat. If not, I'll do it at the end. You can reach out to me specifically. Yes, for our strategic grants, it's by invitation only. In this instance, we're doing sort of a request for applications for this specific part of the application, but you can contact me about some of the other factors, and I can always direct you. Sometimes what you think might be coming to me actually is core grant making, and so it's really easy for me to usually tease that out and make sure you get to the right place. I will also say that one of the easiest things to do, and we have a great website for bookings, if you ever have a question and you're just interested, please use the bookings feature. It will connect you to a program officer here at the foundation. And if they're, in general, can provide you general information about the grants and different opportunities available either on the core grant making or strategic grant making side. So yes, happy to include my email.
Great.
Laura, I
Thank
see you have 2 questions around community and eligible orgs and fiscal sponsors. Yeah, I'm going to have you wait because I think we'll cover them in application details. But if I don't, please, pause and ask me to repeat something or provide additional details. All right. I think we'll dig into the application now, which is what I'm sure you're all really excited about. It's what I would have been excited about if I was sitting in your chair. So let's talk about the application. I'm going to really go through the application and really pull out what it is we're looking for in those areas, how you can write a strong application. And so first and foremost, you can see on this first page of the application, really basic details about your organization, about the applying organization. I do want to just note that the proposal contact really should be the person who's going to know the most about the project. This is who we will contact as follow-up sort of in review stages if we have additional questions. And so I encourage you to really think through who the best person is in your organization to put there so that communication is clear and quick. This is a pretty tight turnaround. We wanted to get these funds out relatively quickly. So we'll be reviewing applications pretty quickly. And so I just want to make sure that proposal contact isn't a person who plans to be out on vacation for the whole month that we're in review stage, for example. So just be thoughtful about who you put as your proposal contact. Please provide a brief description of what your organization does. The applying organization might do much more beyond just, childcare. So please limit that to 4 sentences, but just a brief overview of what your organization does here. On the next page of the application, you'll see that we are looking for your board or council members. So please include everybody who serves either on your board, or if you're a tribal organization or local government, tribal government, please include your council members there. And just some information about how your board and council supports your organization carrying out its mission. We like to see that. For the grant type, here's where you're going to select which grant you're applying for, either the Convening Award, which is the up to $7,000, or the Designing Award, which is up to $15,000. Just a note, you shouldn't be applying for both. Your community really is either at the convening stage or your community's at the designing stage. And so if you're feeling really stuck and don't know which stage you're in, I mean, that could be a time to reach out and we'd be happy to try to help you assess that. But you shouldn't be applying for both. So if your community really is at the convening level, please apply for the convening level. If your community is ready for designing, please apply for the designing level. Okay, so just want to make sure we don't get double clicks there. Then we'll go into your project description. Your title, really obvious. The amount requested, here at the amount requested, you should be putting there how much you're requesting from the foundation. You can request up to, that says up to 7,000, up to 15,000. You may not need all 7,000 or all 15,000. So really at that amount requested, it's what you're requesting from us. And then if you have a total project budget that exceeds that, which you may, maybe you're asking us for 7, but the whole project's 9,000, then you put that total project budget as 9,000 there. Then we'll want a detailed timeline from you. I noted that I recognize this as a relatively short period of window. It's May to November that we're expecting the convenings to occur. And so we really want to make sure that you have a realistic timeline of feasibility to get that done. And so, here really providing the details of, when you plan to do invitations, when you think the convening is going to occur, what you need to do to sort of set up on the front end. So just making sure you're giving enough details that it's clear that you can manage and accomplish the grant by November 30th. So the convening by November 30th. I know that you had a question about community. That's a great question. You can see we didn't give you a community definition, and that's really important because I think the definition of community in Alaska can be so varied and so different. So a community could be a borough. Maybe it's appropriate for an entire borough to want to convene. Maybe it's appropriate for like one village wants to apply because they want to very specifically look at that. It could be a region. By many different standards. And so what we don't want to see is a statewide. We're not looking for a statewide convening. We are really looking for local and regional conversations. And so I don't want to give you an answer that's like a region can't be bigger than this, or it can't be, because that's not true. Our state is so diverse in how it presents and how it looks. And so you would want commonality, and especially commonality in that your community or region should really match the revenue idea. So we wouldn't want to convene, an entire borough to ask a city to pass local tax. In that sense, we should really convene the members of the city if that local tax is where we think we're really going, right? And so really just being thoughtful about when you create your communities and regions. That's why this is open for you to really tell us who that is, that your funding revenue ideas sort of match the community or region. Laura, does that give you enough information, or you want more specifics?
Can I ask more specifically?
Yeah, please.
So, Anchorage is a huge community, and there are communities inside of Anchorage that are pertinent to childcare. So would Rasmuson consider, for example, Spanish-speaking home-based childcare providers a community in and of it themselves, so that they can have the conversation in Spanish rather than having to translate and be working in their second language with other people across Anchorage?
Yeah, that's a great question, Laura. I think I would say this is where your application would become really important, that you can show us how that breakout of specific population is directly linked to a revenue idea that you think holds like a lot of weight and would be able to pull. Because again, these convenings are not just about childcare. They're about the local revenue solutions that can support childcare. And so I won't say that that's a no by any means. I think that that's much more the strength of your application, being able to demonstrate how that convening, bringing those folks together, can support this sort of long-term revenue path forward. And I know home-based childcare especially is a really essential part of that conversation in childcare. And so I would just say that sort of. I'm not going to say it's ineligible. I certainly wouldn't say that at all. It's not. I would just want to make sure you could really think through the whole process of like how that would, and that's the application would be able to do that for you, hopefully, when you submit it. Thanks. Great question. Let me see where I'm at. Oh, project executive summary. We give you a formula here. I really ask that you stick to the formula. It really helps us if you do. I know that it seems a little restrictive, but it does help us. So, who the organization is, request this much of this much size project to, learn to build out revenue options in the community of Fairbanks. Let's just say that's your first sentence. Describing what the funds will be used to buy or pay for, a sentence that describes the local childcare context in your community, and then a benefit of the funding to that community. What do you think you'll get as a benefit? And I know that that's really hard to give one sentences and these really large contacts, but this project executive summary does really help us overview really quickly, see what you're asking for. And so I do ask that you stick with that formula if you can for us. In the childcare landscape section, Please provide a detailed description of the current childcare landscape in your community or region. And really what I want to say here is, I understand you might not have facts and figures and data points. If you have them, great. We'd love to see them. That's very helpful. If you have done a needs assessment and your region has one and it highlighted childcare as a need in this very specific way, go ahead and link to that. That's really helpful. But also tell us about what's unique in your region. Help us understand your region. What's the landscape of your region? You know, is it one childcare provider? Is it villages where people are traveling by snow machine between them? I mean, what does the landscape for childcare really look like? Is, you know, after school care is relatively covered, but early childhood, there's a huge gap. Laura brought up Spanish-speaking childcare providers. You know, there's a shortage of childcare providers for immigrant or refugee communities who are looking to send their children to culturally competent homes. So, you know, really give us the landscape of what that childcare looks like in this section. In the history section, we really want to know about any past convenings or community actions that have taken place already in your community to address the cost of childcare. And if there have been proposed local funding solutions, what those outcomes were. In the convening grant level at the $7,000 level, we're not expecting you to have a huge history, because what you're saying is we haven't really done a lot and we want to get into the room and start having the conversation. So at the convening level, we wouldn't expect a lot in this history section. If you're applying for the designing grant or the designing award at the $15,000 level, we would expect to see some history there, right? That really shows that you're ready to be at the designing stage. And so we would want to see details of, we've come together multiple times. These sorts of people came together. We, you know, our local city council discussed this, but it didn't move forward, or it did move forward and it actually ended up on the ballot, but didn't pass. Like really providing us details of what's been tried in your local community. And then for project staffing, I do want to point out this is one area of importance for the project staffing. There is an applying organization, but we do require that the application must have 2 co-chairs. And 1 co-chair must be outside of the applying organization. Okay, so we're going to ask for the applying organization is going to be the main applying organization. There will likely be a co-chair identified in that applying organization. You will need an additional co-chair for this. And here we're asking for those co-chairs' names, qualifications, and brief bios. Some logic around why this is included is that we understand that these conversations are most successful when they cut across many stakeholders. So if the only folks at the table are the childcare providers, but the business community isn't available or participating, that those voices are best, that we've seen a lot of success when multiple stakeholders come together and have these conversations together. So the business sector, the policymakers, the childcare providers themselves, families, parents, mothers. You know, I have 3 kids in childcare right now. I really understand childcare in a deep way as a funder now, and also as a parent who has to, you know, find childcare for my kids every day. And so bringing those distinct voices together, I think brings a lot of value to the final product and really allows it to have more ability to be broad in its outreach after the convening. And so we're hoping that in these co-chairs, we may see some diversity. So if you want to apply as the applying organization and you're a childcare provider, maybe you can get a co-chair that's a policymaker, or maybe you can get a co-chair that's the tribal administrator, or maybe the co-chair can be the Chamber of Commerce. So really looking at co-chairs, a strong application would really show that diversity and stakeholders being represented. I do want to note that the additional co-chair may be from an organization that would not be eligible as the applying organization. So many chambers of commerce are 501c6s. And so they're not eligible to apply because they're not a 501c3, but they are certainly a great match to be the co-chair. So we don't expect, let me just say that again so it's clear. The applying organization must be a 501c3 local government or a tribal government, a tribe. But the co-chair that you may select may not be in those organizations. So the co-chair could just be someone who's a community leader in their own respect, or someone who worked in the childcare sector for many years, or it could be a 501c6 like a Chamber of Commerce. And so that additional co-chair doesn't have to be the same as the applying organization. So I know I had that question early on. So I want to make sure we cover that. All right. Here's where we're going to want the details of your project. Who, what, where, when, why, the classic elementary school sort of idea. Like, what are the details? How's it going to play out? What's it going to look like? Are you going to have one convening that lasts for a day over 8 hours? Is your community better set up to do 4 2-hour convenings over a series of time? Like, what do you think the design's actually going to look like? What is that project sort of, what's the description, what's the details? This is where we'd really want to start to see all of that information about how you plan to actually implement it. Participants, we just want to see who you plan to invite. We recognize that your invitations won't be who can participate, that's not realistic, but we would love to see who you plan to invite. And then again, we're asking for their affiliation. So sort of what realm are they in? Are they a policymaker? Are they a business leader? Are they a child care provider themselves, a parent? Do they work in education? So really strong applications, again, will show participant lists that go really cutting across multiple sectors in the conversation. And then objectives, we would like to see clear goals that your project aims to achieve. Ideally, 1 to 3 goals would be identified. What will be a successful convening at the end? What would be the outcome that you see? So really wanting to see some goals of your project. And on this other page, we're asking for your partners who are involved in planning and implementation. I want to be clear that participants are different than partners. And so, you may be inviting a number of people to participate in the convenings that you host. But partners are really individuals who are coming to the table and doing the legwork behind the scenes to make it happen. And so maybe your partner is someone who is going to offer you the in-kind space to host the convening, right? That's really a partner. You have a facilitator who's going to do, you have a community member who's offered to do facilitation for free, for example, if that's needed. They would be a partner. If you have another entity that's willing to host alongside you. So those would be the people we'd really want to see as partners. Maybe you have a coalition that's sort of already working on this in your community, and that coalition is the partner. Maybe they're not the applying applicant, but they're a partner in it. So really, partners are doing some of that legwork behind the scenes. So we want you to be sure to include that, who those folks might be. If you have another funder outside of the foundation, you would want to list them here as a partner. You'll provide the project budget, details of how you plan to spend the funds. And then there's a section for project funding. Please be sure to include in the project funding in kind if you have it. So there is no match required for this. You could submit a project that is purely funded just off the award dollars that are available here. That's okay. If you do have other funding sources or you have in-kind, matches always make an application stronger, I would say. We love to see other support. It indicates broad support for your project. And so if you have those, please include them. And I do want to make sure to say in-kind is important and should be included if it's relevant to your project. Okay, here's an area for budget narrative. Many people know what that is, so I won't get into details. We'll ask for your organization's most recent fiscal year data. And finally, we need financial items from you, including a balance sheet, like a statement of your financial position, and a profit and loss statement. These are not optional. These are required. If applications are submitted without finances, they'll be considered ineligible. So it is really important that we receive your finances as part of your final submission. There are some options. You can provide letters of support if that's something you want to do. So if you want to receive letters of support from other partners or others who are supportive of your project, please include those with your submission. And your last year's audited financials are also always welcomed in helping us in our decision-making process. As you'll see here, the additional boxes are that you may have more board members than we had spots available. You may have more participants than we had spots available. And so we just sort of left these big text boxes so you can kind of dump something there in case there wasn't enough space. And so if you go to do your participants and you're like, how do I add more rows? It's a fillable PDF. It wasn't easy to build the system where you could do that. And so what we really did is build these extra text boxes for you to drop additional information. So if you need additional space for those participants or additional space for your board members, this is where you can go ahead and add them right here at the end of the application. Things to consider. There's one front door. If you need us, you can come find us here at the foundation, hopefully always. There'll be right on the website that I directed you to earlier. You can book time with a program officer. You'll see one that says Tending the Future Fund Childcare that will connect you directly with me. I know my email was provided in the chat. Thank you, Gary, for doing so. Please reach out to us. We want to hear from you. We're excited to sort of see what might come from this. And so anything that can be done to be helpful, please reach out to me while you're in the application stage, and I'll be sure to try to get back to you as timely as possible. We know the window's relatively narrow. Communication will be with your assigned program officer. In this situation, it would be me or with the grants management staff. You'll submit to grants management staff, and so you'll see either communication from me or them. Make sure that your proposal is complete. You know, it will be such a shame to get such a good application and then you just didn't fill out one of the boxes. Everything on the application is required unless it says optional. So you'll see that right at the top of the application. It says every section of this application is required. So please, you know, just make sure you do the double checks and make sure you turn in complete applications to us so that we can look at your projects and assess them. And just a reminder that the foundation you know, can't always fund everything we get, and we get lots of really great projects and great ideas and things that benefit Alaskans all the time that we aren't able to fund. And so please know that a decline or a potential withdrawal is not a negative. It's not seen as a negative, and certainly won't affect your future applications with us. And so just always want to note that. And you know, really the best thing you can do for your organization is give us a really good narrative around why your community needs it, what you plan to do, who's going to be there, and really, you know, demonstrate the strong plan you have. Okay, I answered some questions, but this is the opportunity to ask me more questions if you have them. Either by speaking up or putting them in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer them. And I just want to again say it's really nice to see so many faces, and we're excited at how many people seem excited by this opportunity. Yes, Laura, go ahead.
Sure. So I didn't see the question about like fiscal sponsorship by a nonprofit of a grassroots coalition or a coalition of small business owners, or, you know, because so many childcare providers are small business owners rather than nonprofits. How does that work if the sponsoring organization isn't, you know, for example, maybe this isn't their mission and vision completely, but they're willing to sponsor it because of some connection, either through childcare or through, you know, immigrant and refugee support or something like that.
Right. Yeah, fiscal sponsors are appropriate, and we work with fiscal sponsors all the time. I would encourage, if you're in a sort of fiscal sponsor idea, really trying to figure out if there's a model in which that applying organization wants to be the applying organization and then that other group is the co-chair. That might be appropriate. I mean, that's really for you to assess in your organizational sort of structure with how you're sort of setting it up. But that co-chair model does allow, say, a small group of business owners or a group of home-based Spanish speakers to go to another applying organization who is eligible, and they're the applying organization, and that group is the co-chair. That coalition is the co-chair. I think that that's a great way to use that co-chair sort of infused model that we put in, because we recognize that not every voice in this might be an eligible organization, right? And so we hope that that co-chair will really represent the diversity of voices, but also could be an area in which there's some work that can be done by that coalition, right, as part of it as a co-chair. But they may not be the applying organization. Of course, the applying organization will be responsible for the management of the funds. They'll receive the awards. They'll be responsible for the final report. And so that may be something you want to talk to somebody about in sort of that fiscal sponsorship model, fiscal sponsor model. So great question, Laura. And thanks for calling it back, because I did miss it. All right. If you do have questions, if you're a person who really needs to consume what you just heard, you want to go on the website, spend some time with it, download the application. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have questions. And oh, we have one more question at least. But if you are a person that needs time to consume, please do so, and feel free to reach out to us afterwards. I think you'll find a lot of your answers really on the website. So I do encourage you to spend time there. We tried to really make some good FAQs for you all. But if anything else comes up, please let me know. And go ahead, Laura.
Sure. Is the goal of these convenings and conversations coming up with revenue measures, is the goal of that it's a new revenue measure that equally affects all childcare providers, or could it be that that what comes out of the convening is ways to make revenue more equitably distributed in ways that it currently isn't? I'm just thinking of this, group of Spanish-speaking home-based providers. Their solution might not be a new source of revenue entirely. It might be how to make sure that non-dominant English speakers have access to existing sources.
Yeah, that's
or
a good
something
question.
like that.
That's a good question, Laura. I think at the heart of it, the goal is that we recognize that currently childcare is not sustainable without robust investment at the federal, state, local, every level, right? And so really the heart of the idea is let's get folks together. We've seen some success at the local level. Let's get folks together and see what other creative ideas might be able to come forward that would produce some additional sort of revenue. And that could be, so I'm not going to say no, but I mean, really at the heart of it was this sort of idea that there would be an increase to the funding available. And so I would say that heart of that idea is really there, and I wouldn't want it to get lost. Equitability and access to funding, of course, is always an ongoing issue. But I would say that at the heart of this idea is really we need diversity in our funding that's available. And so the idea certainly may have an equitable cultural access point lens on it that comes out. That's great. But I think it does need to sort of be revenue based, is what I would say. Okay, well, I want to give a special shout out to Jesse, Hannah, and Laura so that I could see faces during this. You really make a difference. I know. I just want to say that. Thank you to everyone for being here, but a special shout out to my friends who left their cameras on so I could see their faces. And that's always very lovely. And thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. The foundation is going to continue to do these webinar series on the various programs that we've been doing. So please keep an eye on our website about upcoming series. And Michael has a question, so I'll stop saying goodbye to you and let Michael ask his question.
I'm sorry. I just
Please.
have a question. So if you're like working for a nonprofit association and we're already getting CCDF funding for tribal funding, is that considered like a partner for us? Or are you talking about like we would have to find another revenue source on top of that?
We would want to see what's your creative, like bringing people together and talking about that funding. Is there other funding you could be leveraging using that funding? Are there creative ways in which you're not currently using the funding that a convening would support creatively looking at that funding in a different way? And so again, it's not the goal of the convenings and the designing grants isn't to just bring people together to talk about the problem. It's really to bring people together to talk about changing or relooking at different funding. And so, yeah, many tribes and organizations are receiving those funds already, but have you really met and talked about how you may use them different? Or are there other ways you could be leveraging other resources with those funds or alongside those funds to really help you meet the needs in your community that probably are not being met in childcare? So I hope that answers your question, Michael.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Hey, yeah, so this is Thomas from the After School Network. A question, in regards to thinking of the accessing new or expanding funding, is that also for if that funding is focused around a collective pursuing a source of sustainable private funding, not necessarily one sole entity, but other funding that's not a public fund, like, municipal tax or something of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the convening level, especially at the convening level, we're saying get in a room and talk about the funding you haven't accessed, you haven't gone to, you haven't looked for. Like, what are the other revenue streams or ideas that could be implemented now that could be, and that could even be cost saving measurements. I mean, we've heard so much about like a shared services model or other things like on a local community level, like that, while not creating new revenue, is expanding revenue, right? Because it's creating and opening up funds in other ways. And so like, we don't want that to be the core of the project, but especially at that convening level, especially at the convening, the designing level, we're expecting you to have a very solid idea. I have a very solid idea, and we're making an implementation plan to get it on the ballot or to get it introduced at the borough, or right, like those would be really, but at the convening level, I mean, I would encourage people to really think about funding broadly, but always, 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 I mean, I can just not stress this enough. Private foundations are not going to save childcare, right? Like, I'm just going to say that sentence. Private foundations aren't going to save childcare. And so we really want people to be discussing broadly funding. And that's what we hope would happen at those convenings, especially at that $7,000 level where you're first getting people together. Especially like these are one-time awards, I'll say that. We're providing one-time awards as a foundation. And while that's great, and we hope it produces some really thoughtful and cool things, it's not ongoing sustainable funding like a tax base or a public tax-based dollar can be. Thanks, Thomas. Great question.
Kind of related to that, does the Rasmussen Foundation have any plans for, say, future larger grants to help with what I think the Office of Child Care refers to as minor renovations or parts of that, just especially in rural Alaska, and a number of schools that are, you know, have been denied capital funding projects by the state of Alaska Education and Development. Really, some of the programs. Yeah. I think there's 200 schools statewide. There's that money.
Yeah.
Those are some of the things that, again, in the capital bills were good, but there's multiple partners, whether we're looking at Haynes or, I want to say Ketchikan, but Ketchikan is considered urban in many definitions, but there's no consistent definition of urban or rural for Alaska, which makes it a little bit challenging, but those are some of the partnerships that I would think in Ketchikan. We have Rural Cap providing Head Start. We have both the partner tribe of Ketchikan Indian community, but we also have the organized village of Saxman, and so there's multiple partners and players, and so these would be great kind of discussion, funding, and I always just say planning, but convening things. But again, when it comes to the next step, trying to plan those activities, is there anything from the foundation that might be reliable or sustainable for those initial conversations?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say, you know, with our strategic grant making side, we are looking at long-term systemic change. We sort of do that in pockets and guidelines. And so right now we have a $2 million initiative that's really focused in very targeted areas that don't include these large parts that you're asking about, Jesse. But I think that, you know, some of the way the foundation approaches this work is for us to do these conversations, and what we learn from local communities in these convenings will inform the work we continue to do in the future. The foundation, I hope you see us in your community. We have community conversations and other ways in which we're involved. I know we have some coming up that I'm sure Gary could include in the chat. I mean, these are good opportunities for us to listen and learn about what communities need, and we try to meet we try to look at our future plans based off what we hear from communities. And so this is one part. This is where we're starting, and we're excited to sort of see where it goes. But please, you know, if we're in your community, meet with a program officer, reach out, use our different ways to engage, share what's happening in your community so we can listen and learn thoughtfully. It doesn't mean we're definitely going to do something, but it does inform the way we view our future work. So thanks for sharing that. We know that there's a lot of challenges in this area, just like there are in lots of other areas. This is one small part to sort of see what's coming up. So yeah, Gary put that there's regional convenings that are coming up on March 12th. That's a great way to call in and share what's happening in your community. It's a good time for us to listen. All right. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for coming, for listening, for participating, and we look forward to seeing applications from your community and hearing your great ideas. Thank you so much.